Hey team, so this is Adam McGurk. I'm going to be doing the teaching on the Java framework or library called Hibernate. So let me just run this. Like I said, Hibernate is a Java framework or well, let's get into the second slide. It's very popular. It's open source. And it's an object relational mapping persistence framework. And that's a lot of words. What it means is that it maps objects to relational databases, specifically tables. And persistence, the word has things to do with databases. And so it maps objects to your database and your database tables. It can connect to just about any relational database. Those are MySQL, PostgreSQL, SQL Server, Oracle SQL, any of those database management systems. It does not do, from the knowledge that I gathered, it does not do NoSQL. So things like MongoDB, PouchDB, CouchDB, things like that, it does not do that. It needs to map to a relational database. And it also works with the Java framework Spring, and the package manager or the package the package relation, I don't really know what to call it, but Maven, which if you're a web developer, you're probably familiar with Webpack, Webpack, Gulp, Grunt, things like that. Maven is very similar to those things. It compiles your application and lets the developer worry about developing and not compiling. And so let's move on to the third slide. Give you kind of an overview of Hibernate. Relational databases are based off of a tabular format, tables, while Java is an object-oriented and not tabular language. And it's not logical to map objects to tables, and I'll show you an example of this. So here's my code. It's really, really simple code. This is a class of, employee, and this is the table of employee. Now this presents a lot of problems because, while this all works and, maps perfectly, what if you add a column here? What if you add two different employee tables? What if you add foreign keys, that connect, like, employee departments, things like that? When you start to think about those things, it really gets out of hand. Trying to map your objects to your relational databases, and more often than not, you'll get lost, and you will make errors that are preventable, and that's 95% of development is fixing preventable errors. And so that's what Hibernate, does its best to do really well, to map objects to tables. Hibernate is the in-between for the objects and the database table. So here's, the object, that employee class, which turns into an object that I showed you. Here's where Hibernate sits, or any object relational management system. And it sits in between the database. It allows for itself to be the in-between for the objects and the database table. And it maps Java classes to SQL tables and vice versa. Let's move on to the next slide. And here's kind of two pictures that shows a very good example of it. Here's your application, and here's the object. And here's two specific Hibernate files. The Hibernate.properties file and the XML mapping that maps straight to the database. Or this picture, which is more correct and shows the classes implemented by the Hibernate interface. This is the application, this is the object, and then these are the classes that you work with to work with the transaction APIs, your JTA, your JDBC, JNDI, things like that, and your database. And so these are two really good pictures. Hibernate is, one thing about Hibernate is it is very complex to install and to set up and to really get an MVP, a minimum viable product running. And so to show that would take too long. as shown by the 30-minute videos that are in this last slide. And so I have more resources here. That's a really high-level view of Hibernate. Just think of it as the go-between between your objects and your database. And then watch these videos that I'll link to, and watch this video, excuse me, that I'll link to in the Hangouts, and read these articles. And they will really give you a better idea of how to work with Hibernate and how to implement it and all that stuff. Thank you very much.